Alrighty, so let's do this. Let's verify that we actually are live. Yes, we are, because I'm using a new tool that I wrote myself to make my life easier. But tools tend to have bugs, especially when I write them. Alright, so let's first go over these two, because these are the only ones that are marked as still blocking a partner. So the first one would be the immutable one, which hopefully is pretty straightforward. So Andy proposed that we should expose S-span and S-memory on an immutable array because it's effectively like an array. And this one does, still give you read-only semantics, so you can't really modify that. And if you really need the other ones, you can still go to the, I forgot what the API is, but we have some sort of unsafe API where you can get the underlying arrays. People can already do that, but it's probably not what we want. Any concerns?
I'm just curious. I don't have any concerns. I'm just curious. What is this blocking? What's trying to use this?
So I think they used it in the metadata reader somewhere. Because the whole metadata reader is based on immutable, and so is the compiler, right? I just marked it because it's always safe when partners file something and we never get to it because it's such a tiny thing. Just said 13 days ago, let's discuss Tuesday. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, I think Andy had found some perf improvements he could make in the compiler by exposing this.
So one question would be, as memory returns a read-only memory, which then has a try-get memory, or try-get array rather, which lets you fish out the array pretty easily. But I believe that try-get array is already on memory marshal, so maybe we don't care.
The try-get array is on memory marshal, it's not directly on...
It is on memory marshal.
Oh, there's awesome. Let me quickly see, try-get array.
These read-only, so they're just suggestions of usage. They don't actually lock it.
Read-only span prevents you from doing it unless you use unsafe code like memory marshal, which is unsafe.
Yeah, I see. So the gating factor is has to remain read-only until you use the unsafe keyword and then do whatever.
Yeah.
Unsafe keyword or something that we've deemed equivalent, like
dangerous.
The marshal. Yeah. But yeah, as long as the try-get array, I think we put it there because we were saying, well, if it's read-only, fishing out the array, then you get something writable, so it should be on memory marshal. And as long as we did that, then I don't have any concerns.
Yeah.
Now let me
sounds reasonable.
Look up one thing. Where is it again? Turns out search doesn't really work so well if you don't quite know what you're looking for.
I've been using it. I know it's on memory marshal.
Yeah, no, that one makes sense. But the I'm looking for. I thought we had. Maybe not. I thought we added an API to Immutable that allows you to get the underlying array, but it doesn't seem like we ended up adding that type because I can't find it in the sources. Because if we would have done that, we would have put this into interrupt services as well. I think the conclusion there was if you really want to do this, it's trivial to write yourself a little struct that does the explicit layout trick to fish out the array, and then you just do it in unsafe cost effectively. And I think that's what the metareader actually does to avoid copying the array. All right, so yeah. Anyway, so I think if there are no concerns, then let's just move this one. That was an easy one. And also not remove the label, not that it matters, but good label hygiene. All right, so this one, Stephen, do you feel like you have enough context to approve that, or should we wait for more details from Fowler?
Sorry, let me read it for a second. It seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, basically, this is just saying we want to transfer from one reader to another writer, basically pipe it through, no pun intended. It seems fine to me. Is there any discussion?
Well, the only question was from Ben Adams whether it should also take a buffer size, but Paulo didn't seem to like that.
Sorry, could you scroll down so I can see?
Oh, sorry. And I'm looking at my own screen as well because I can scroll at my own. That was the only one. But yeah.
And we could always, in the future, add an overload that took a buffer size,
Yeah.
although it'd be a little weird with the virtuals, but it seems fine to me.
Right. All right. Sweet. So that one is done. I really want one cursor for both monitors. Or one cursor per monitor, actually, more than that. So now let's just sort those ones basically oldest to newest. I think it's already done. And then let's just walk top to bottom to see what anything stands out. Steven, do you care about any of those?
Nothing to make it jump the list.
All right, then let's just start. Bum, ba-dum, boom. What does this actually look like?
This is marked as API ready for review. Is there a actual proposed API in here?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Like, I can't even find the type that they're talking about.
I think if you scroll down, it's got the actual.
This, system runtime interrupt service
Architecture, really?
architecture. Oh, they want to extend it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I picked up from the issue itself.
I'm
but I
surprised we
couldn't
didn't have those.
Today we have ARM, ARM64, x64, and x86. Yeah.
I thought we also had a lot more values in here, or maybe that's in the C side, and they're editor browsable never. Or maybe I'm thinking of another.
I think you're thinking of the old OS.
The environment one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the one
okay,
I was
okay.
thinking of.
Yeah.
Because that one is broken as hell, right? And then you have the new OS platform that basically only has 4 entries right now.
Yeah, system.platform ID was the one I was thinking of.
Platform ID, yeah, that's also right there. Yeah, and those ones are, I mean, Nokia S60, right? Yeah, for sure.
So what's the purpose of this enum? It's obviously, why is it under interop services?
Because that's where we have runtime information.
It's one part of runtime.
Yeah, so you would do runtime information dot is OS platform blah and is architecture blah.
It's a new thing.
Yeah.
Okay. In case we were to decide we should consider runtime.
I mean, new is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, it's, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Newish.
It's even in full framework.
Well, that's because we absorbed runtime information into Net Standard 2. And
Oh, that's
that
right.
into
That's how that
full
traveled
framework.
there. I see, that's fair. Yeah, I guess, I mean, the usual thing with platform checks is you want to write some code, right? That checks for that, and then, you know, P invokes one or the other, or...
Yeah, it's just exposed via the runtime information dot OS architecture.
Is this an enum, actually? It is an enum.
Yeah.
That was probably a mistake.
I'm not so sure that's a mistake, at least from the perspective. It's no different than well, I guess we didn't do that with OS platform.
No, we
Yeah.
deliberately made it a string-based enum so you can, like, each platform can add entries and then we can merge them later, right? This problem
Yeah.
here is if one adds a value, you're fucked.
Yeah, we need to know what values they chose. Mono.
right? So if Mono adds in one entry, we add one entry, and we didn't coordinate that change, then well, what is number 4 now?
Yeah. Whatever net
probably what we
standard
lose at
decides.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any concerns with it, but also, as I said, my K level is almost 0 for this API.
There's
Like
also system reflection processor architecture. That's an IL.
Yeah, this one I think is more for the metadata that we burn in, right?
Right.
And I think that probably only has to ref when the metadata changes.
Although there's complaints that still exist on us burning it in and saying we should look it up at runtime, so we avoid some issues that pop up.
Yeah, I guess that's also fair. But
like, I think I'm fine with exposing them. WebAssembly is probably the one that's most interesting moving forward.
the WebAssembly is the only one like where I'm unsure that is actually the right thing to do.
Good name. Yeah.
Like it's the same discussion we had on the TFM. It's like if we only ever have one implementation, then that's great.
Well,
But
isn't
is WebAssembly
WebAssembly the
enough?
name of the formal standard?
Well, I guess that's also a good question, but I guess WebAssembly in this context would just be the code you're generating, right? In which case, that's well defined. For the TFM, it's a bit more complicated because it's like, well, do we have multiple frameworks that allow you to run in WebAssembly? In that case, the TFM would be more
I think this is from the perspective of you are running in a WebAssembly machine.
Yeah, you're
It's
basically
the virtual
emitting whatever the instructions
and it's independent of the TFM. So it's saying that it would just be like if we expose CIL here, we wouldn't say you've got mono CIL and RCIL. You're saying I'm running in a CIL virtual machine.
What happens when they put in a new? They decide they need to encode more information in the WebAssembly VM, such that there might be more than one.
I imagine that's no different than
x86 adding.
then adding SSE instruction set.
So we think it's that core that it would always be additive. It would never be something where it's completely mutually exclusive.
Yeah, or if it was a clear split, then we would probably have we would want to differentiate on the name there.
Yeah,
I see, and they burn the good name.
Yeah. Just like ARM32 and ARM64, unlike x86 and x64, it's not a logical extension. It's a rewrite from the architecture perspective.
Yeah. So if that happens in the future and we burned the good name, is there any precedent here for other tool chains that have more established adoption of WebAssembly? Like what is the
I don't even know what
S390X is. Yeah, I don't either.
Does anybody know what that is? No.
That's like an old machine that colleges use, from what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, like I would not add any random architecture in here because otherwise it's a never-ending set.
Yeah.
Like WebAssembly makes sense. I guess PowerPC makes sense.
So I think that one's because Mono supported compiling for Xbox 360.
Yeah, if there's a real device that people actually use that has that architecture, I'm fine with that. If it's just some random thing that Mono had, then I would say, well, Mono had a bunch of random stuff, so we don't want to support all of that, I suppose.
Conceptually, is WebAssembly considered an architecture?
Well, it kind of is, right? It's an ISA, right?
Okay.
In the sense that you have real instructions that have outputs and that you can send to the browser to execute, right?
Okay.
The S390X, it looks to be an IBM mainframe from the 60s.
That sounds not very appealing.
390.
Yeah, I've got
by Neil Ferguson is currently.
Yeah, let's do this.
Oh, it's got newer stuff too. It's the IBM Z mainframes.
We should go see what
Mono does with it.
What values did Mono give, and then we should probably set some rules moving forward for ranges that folks can use.
Yeah, or potentially expose a new API that operates from the perspective of returning a. Yeah, we could. Yeah. Yeah, so today we've got OS platform, but architecture. So we could conceivably expose OS architecture. Or I guess that doesn't make sense there. The reason we didn't is because we also have process architecture.
There was a very interesting distinction because of the fact that you might be running 32-bit on, like running in WoW.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, or you might be running x86 on ARM for the emulation layer. And the WebAssembly stuff, the spec actually covers like an entire VM of like here's how the types are and how the stack works and everything else. So conceptually, it's an architecture.
So if like one of the people asked this question, I'm gonna repeat it. But if somebody says if architecture is architecture of WebAssembly, what are they supposed to do with that information?
you load your WebAssembly native DLL.
And otherwise, else?
Maybe you load your x86
I see.
native DLL,
Okay.
or you throw.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's really just for like determining whether you can do something architecture specific.
Okay.
The
Like WebAssembly, I don't have a specific example,
Right,
but
right.
like ARM versus x86 versus x64
Yeah.
lets you know which plugins or native components that you want to depend on and load.
Okay.
And it can also tell you like which p invokes to call, because on like Windows, for example, there's some 32-bit functions which are actually macros rather than functions, whereas they're actual functions on 64-bit.
or how to unpack a struct. The struct has its steps. That's it's a conflation conflation parameter.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we get a comment here from in the chat from Jerome. He says WebAssembly has more similarity with .NET Core as a runtime than x86 as a CPU architecture because there are runtime ties with WebAssembly internal calls.
So the way it was modeled before is it was both. So
That's right. I think
it was both a runtime and an architecture.
Yeah, so the way I think about this, and maybe that's the wrong way, but like if you look at architecture, I would say it just indicates effectively what CPU you're running on, right? Logically, right? If you're running in a VM, then it's whatever the VM is using, right? And then I would say that if we have multiple runtimes, so right now we have the mono runtime for WebAssembly that uses, I forgot what stuff they pick. There's some minimalistic C-based runtime that they ported, I think, and then that's what interpreting the IL at runtime. If we build a different thing, let's say something based off of, I don't know, Core T or something, then you would just have different TMMs for that, in which say, just if you want to have differences between implementation A and implementation B, it is .NET specific, then you do whatever web specific, whatever .NET specific checks you would have to do. So in that sense, I would not care that there are different runtime implementations. I mean, it's the same what we have today with, let's say, RioJIT, right? We had RioJIT that did x86, and then we had whatever the old JIT was called, right? And if you were broken by this, you just do a TMM check. All right, so like I added my 2 cents. If anybody disagrees with that comment, I can edit it now. Otherwise, I just marked it as needs some work.
Yeah.
Just bump it back. Alrighty, then let's do the next one. Yeah, that one is a bit more on the... The heck is this get view between? Does it even exist anymore? No, I don't think so. It actually does.
It exists on like sorted set or
Yeah,
hash
sorted
set or
set.
something, right?
Yeah, sorted set. It gives you back a new sorted set between 2 values. I've never heard of this name. uh, okay, sorted dictionary. So what does that mean? Do you know how sorted dictionary works, Stephen?
It's been a long time since I looked at the implementation.
Yeah, I forgot. There's a few APIs in the framework that are super weird, and I'm not sure if it's like we have one API, but maybe that's one of the specialized ones that is effectively an array and a list. I don't think it's this one here. I think this one is just literally sorting by key, and you index by key. Yeah, there's no index. Sorted dictionary.
No, sorted set is the one that was the
No, I'm saying there was one API that we have in specialized that basically implements both dictionary and list. So you can index by position and by key. But I think that's not this one here. This one literally is just a dictionary. Yeah, it doesn't implement iList. So yeah, I suppose then lookup is effectively a binary search then. Something like that. So in that sense, yeah, that API would not be bad. I mean, I don't know why you would use this API to begin with, but clearly we thought it's useful when we added it on set. And it's used by 0.6%.
sorted list. Closest read-only.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I forgot, but it's like it's some super specialized environment. Yeah, apparently it's slightly higher, 3%, and we just look at first party, but yeah, I don't know. I don't have any objection to that. If somebody wants to write the code for that.
There a consistency question. Would we apply this to other types or parallelism?
So I'm not entirely sure what guarantee sorted set makes. I believe it was either sorted set or hash set, where I mean normally our guarantees for collections is that reading with multiple readers is fine, and as soon as you have one writer, like you can't
Sorry,
do that.
I parallelism. I meant parallelism of API between.
Oh, you
types.
mean like consistency across
Yeah,
the thing?
I don't care about it.
Yeah, I mean, like today the method only exists on sorted set.
Where does the sort and sorted dictionary actually impact? Is it just, without this method, is it just enumerating it?
I believe it's the order in these, in the order in which key value pairs and order in which values keys.
Okay.
So in sorted dictionary, yeah. So what is he proposing is basic by key, right? Yeah. Yeah, honestly, without usage, it's also hard to say, like, is sorted set really the right return, or should you just get a sorted dictionary?
Is it a copy or is
I'd
it?
assume you should get a sorted dictionary.
But then doesn't
Yeah.
that result in the enumeration anyway? That's what the whole point of this API was, to say avoid the enumeration.
Why would it result in it? Doesn't the sorted dictionary wrap a set?
No, it wraps two collections, a key collection and a value collection. And then a tree set of key value pairs.
Right. So what would the implementation that returns a sorted set do that would avoid a copy that returning sorted dictionary would do that couldn't avoid a copy?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure.
It also seems super weird.
Yeah, because
It's
so the tree set internally is just a sorted set. So a dictionary contains a tree set, which inherits from sorted set.
I see. So it basically has that data. So it would be trivial for this to. Well, would it be? Because
I think it's the question of, do I have to create a new class, or could I potentially? No, I think you'd have to either way, because you'd have to copy the sorted set and change the data it's pointing to. So it's going to create a new allocation either way. That wouldn't be.
I mean,
It wasn't that.
given it seems weird that this would change sort of the overall type that was being used. Like sorted set, get view between returns a sorted set. Sorted dictionary, get view between return a sorted dictionary. It's the same argument that we have with ranging and slices.
yeah,
Right.
Basically, that slicing an array gives you back an array. Slicing a list gives you back a.
Yeah.
Unless there's a huge perf argument to be made, and I don't even know what situations this API would be used. So it's hard for me to.
Right. I mean,
say there's a
the
strong
rationale was around performance, so I would have I assumed that it was performance related, but
I guess
I don't have. Yeah, I didn't see it.
you wouldn't have to copy and modify the key collection and value collection if you return a sorted set.
Why not?
Because a sorted set doesn't contain those.
But these are lazily allocated, right?
I mean, view implies to me that after I added something to the collection, the return thing reflects that, right?
The keys and values are only allocated when you actually go to access the keys and values collection.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, you're not going to pay for it. And if you do that, well, you wanted the dictionary.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah, then I don't see any particular reason why we shouldn't return sorted dictionary.
The thing I don't quite understand is like somebody can provide some provide some light on this. If this is really about enumeration, why would we return a sorted set to begin with? Like if the only thing you do is enumerate, then it will be much easier for us to just return an immutable that basically stores the begin and the end key and reference to whatever tree structure we have, so we can always enumerate that without doing crazy gymnastics.
My assumption, and I've basically never used these types in my own code, but my assumption is you want to kind of get the subset between the two values and then be able to still do O1 operations like looking things up, in addition to enumerating.
Right.
Yeah, but you still have the reference to the original dictionary, right? Yeah, I guess you don't want to pay the price of lookup, right? I guess that's fair. Yeah, but then it makes even less sense. Then honestly, then I would probably return an immutable of key value pair or something, right? Because then you can just get the value super cheaply, and implementation is trivial for us.
Well, and iDictionary has IEnumerable of key value pair, doesn't it?
But they don't have a way to get a
they do.
subset of the enumerator. So I think the idea was that you wouldn't, if you got an enumerator, you'd have to call skip, which would
Right.
then spend the cost inefficiently of iterating through things you didn't need to iterate through. The idea is, since it's sorted, you could do a log n operation to find the bounds, and then give an enumerator that just iterates over those bounds.
Yeah, but couldn't you expose that via a get enumerator of
Yeah, different method.
or special case skip for sorted dictionary to know that it can start at E?
So I'm just looking at source.net to
Skip
see where we consume get view between. So like there's an operation, is this set a subset of another one? And to do that, it calls get view between with min and max, and then it loops over every item and calls contains on the subset on the view between. So it's actually getting kind of the constrained thing and then calling the contains on it for each item.
I see. So they actually exploit the fact that it's still a set.
Yeah.
Does
And
it need to be a-
presumably it's doing that even with the costs involved to get view between, because if it's a small enough range, the contains lookups would be much faster, I guess.
Yeah, but that's like sorted set here makes no sense because your key now is the key and the value. Which now also begs the question, what happens when you get a view and now you're going to the dictionary and you just change the value? You can no longer find this guy in your sorted set now. Which kind of defeats the purpose. Yeah, so I think to summarize, I think seem to be generally not against adding an API like that. It's just that the shape that is outlined here seems problematic.
I don't think it should be sorted set. If anything, it should be sorted dictionary, unless
Yes.
we really don't believe there's any use in being able to index into it, in which case IEnumerable. But just if we were going to add an API for parity, it would seem to make sense to be the same type. It'd be great to see examples of how this is actually going to be used.
Yeah.
Do we want to discuss the open issue around mutability, where whether it's sorted dictionary, the user can try to add key value pairs to it, even there's a view.
Yeah, that one, I mean, the other one has the same problem. I don't know what the behavior is. I could imagine it just throws embedded operation exception. I don't know what, I mean, like if it's literally a view over the other one, then, or does it actually insert to the parent? Like, I don't know.
What happens if you insert something that's outside the bounds that the original thing
Exactly.
created by?
Right, right.
No, you
It's
change
like,
the view.
do you just put it there and then you enumerate back and you don't see it, or
Right.
now you have some invalid view? I don't even know how you'd implement that unless it's an immutable
Right. Sorted dictionary would have to know there's a view and to block the ads.
copy on right.
Right.
That'd be crazy.
Although, I mean, if you're allowed to add into an arbitrary sorted set, it kind of doesn't matter whether you're adding into the view or the
Well,
thing that it was a view on top of.
But just
I mean,
imagine
it's strange that
if it wasn't
Go
a
ahead.
copy, imagine what it would do. I guess,
it would just add it to the parent.
but then now how do you represent the sorted set with bounds so that it has the addition but doesn't have the...
I don't think it stores the bounds. It's not like it's not that it's a view that can only contain the values 1 through 3. It just contains the values that were 1 through 3 at the time you said get me a view.
So then if you add something to it and it's outside those bounds, what happens when you enumerate the set again?
It includes the new value.
And how do you do that if you had a view, which implies a reference?
It's added to the original.
Right. So if you just track the starting key and the end key,
So
then you will naturally enumerate from.
So we have a different impression of what view means, I think.
I think the problem here, I think, is the name view. I don't think it's actually like create a view that represents. I could be wrong. I can look at the implementation. I didn't think it was only surface the values from the original between. Well, I don't know what it means. We'll have to go look.
I normally consider view to be similar to what span is, which is you have a reference to the interior data and the end of the data, and you will enumerate through it. So if you keep track of 1 through 3 and someone inserts another 2, now you're going to have an additional value that you enumerate.
Yeah, but if you insert a 0, then how do you represent that without changing your bounds, the span?
Well, I mean, you're still tracking the starting key as 1, and the ending key is 3. 0 presumably is sorted before 1, so you still start by enumerating from 1 on.
You see 1 through 3, and you wouldn't see the thing you added.
Yeah, but you were tracking 1 through 3, not 0 through 3.
But then now you have something where it's like, I have a collection, I can add successfully to that collection, but now when I try and get the thing out that I just added, it's gone.
Adding to
somewhere else.
the collection that gets
Oh,
you
right.
the
So
return.
if you were
Yeah.
if you were tracking the original index of start rather than saying I need to start wherever this index is.
Yeah, and then if you throw away that, like, if you throw away that idea and you say, okay, it can take some sort of copy of, it creates an n-sized collection to make a copy and have its own independent references, then you kind of throw away whatever efficiently meant before, because now you have an, like, I mean, unless it's like, in general, I think getting a view between is probably not. Like, the efficiency you get there is maybe you're saving. I don't know.
I mean,
log n maybe.
yeah, you could have it so that you could do it basically the same we do with struct enumerators, which is keep track of the underlying data, keep track of the current index. In this case, it would be start as well, and then keep track of the version. And if the versions get out of sync, then you know you have to restart from 0 to find where that index starts. Otherwise, you can start from the previous start index.
Yeah. So I just tried it, and sorted set the sorted set return from get view between appears to keep track of the values that you passed. And if you try and add to the view set outside of that range, it throws an exception.
Oh, so it doesn't allow. Yeah, the two behaviors I could imagine was basically either it shifts the bounds, or it basically just inserts to the parent and then just on subsequent enumeration doesn't have it. But yeah, throwing also seems fine. But it does insert to the parent, right?
It does insert to the parent. Yeah.
And then if you enumerate while you're adding, then that also probably blows up for the same reason that it would on the parent.
Yeah, they share the same data structure, so
yeah,
they're all linked.
Yeah. So then my questions for this disappear because they.
I'm curious, this is marked as 3.0. How did we determine what's in 3.0 versus not?
I think that's basically just people figured out that everything that's not in 3.0 we don't look at.
Okay.
You'd have to ask the area owner.
All right. All right, let me mark this as API needs to work. So here's what I've written. Probably with typos. All right. Everybody agree with that?
Yep.
All right. And let me this one here. Have to join with 4 arguments. Yeah, I'd already looked at that. Seems reasonable. I don't know why we didn't do that.
What's our standard number that we have up to?
So path dot
Combine
has 4.
Okay.
So I would just mirror that. I mean, I don't know if we have a standard. I mean, we often have 3. Sometimes we have more than 3.
Yeah, it looks like string.format, for example, has 3 and then switches.
Yeah. I
Um,
think
But-
console write line, I think, had more than that.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense, right? Because it depends on the scenario, right? I guess string formatting, you don't really pass in that many values, but joining, I can totally see you smashing like 6 things together.
all in 4 is probably fine, since, at least from a architecture perspective. Generally, those will still be passed in register, since it's a static class.
And we're very inconsistent even on overloads of the same method. Like concat has overloads that take string for 2, 3, and 4, but only overloads that take object for 1, 2, 3, and 4, but only overloads that take object for 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. I guess we generally didn't care so much because logically they're all like n, right? So
Right, we have params fallbacks for them, so we care from a perf perspective, I guess.
do we have a join that takes? There's no params for join, right? Is there for read-only span of char?
No,
No.
not
So-
for read-only span. I mean, not for spans in general, because we can't put those in arrays.
So what's the?
We don't
What's
even
the
have
workaround?
one.
We don't have one for any. It just has to get pad to join and then call pad to join on the next on this.
Should we have a params overload as well?
Well, we can't. That's the problem with span.
No,
No,
for
for
we don't
string.
even have one for string. We don't
Oh,
have
for
pa-
s-
we
oh,
don't we
for
don't
string.
have path that join param string array.
Okay, that seems dumb. We should probably do that. But what's the workaround for join with spans then? You just
Yeah, you
eat the
call
allocation and
No,
then
no,
you
you-
just
no you
join
do
again.
join.
Result.
Yeah, you do join blah blah blah. Or I guess you're gonna have an allocation,
yeah, you
multiple
basically have an
allocations.
intermediate string, right? You just eat
Oh
that.
yes.
Yeah, you
You're going to have an allocation regardless. Either you call, path 5.toString, or you call toString on each of them, or you do what Tanner and Awesome were saying. It's just you call join on all, on subsets, and you get a string resulting from that, and then you pass it in as one of the arguments.
Right.
we've got try join, which returns a bool and takes a span as the destination. So you're able to allocate a sufficiently large enough
Mm-hmm.
span and avoid the allocations if you need to.
Interesting. So try join.
But that's only for span. We don't have one for string since it doesn't matter there.
Right. And one of the questions around this issue is also should we consider adding try join with 4? Right now you have try join with 3, but the only pushback was the implementation of try join is more complicated, and
Yeah, can we
Are
just
these being asked for because people have a need, or because it's a perceived gap but without a need?
Well, I think for the join one, yeah. So the
Looks like a
particular
perfect
example that he is given here is he basically wants to slice as opposed to substring, and so that means he's basically calling the span overload, but he doesn't want to deal with the try pattern, right? But I would also say that he's using 4 now. If he uses 5, the same argument holds, right?
right.
And
The
he
only
can
difference
keep
is
going.
perceived gap because combine has 4.
Yeah.
So just join.
Well, in his case, it's not
That's
just the gap, right? It's just like he mixes strings and spans, right? And so like he just want to use. I mean, his third argument, he just slices off a few characters, which now means this whole thing basically chooses the span overloads.
Mhm.
And now when he adds a fourth, it stops working. Now he has to go down this try span, but like he's not really a traditional span user in the sense that he's managing buffers himself, right? But I guess he's screwed either way, right? I mean, unless we add like 12 arguments to this, like somebody will find an example with 5, right? And I think at this point it's more about like, okay, we should be consistent, I guess, with ourselves. So in that sense, I think it would make sense to have a join that takes 4 spans.
Right.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the implementation is, because we can't do span of span. I suppose you can't really centralize. You have like 3 different implementations.
We do.
Yeah, so they are not cheap.
Just as proposed, the one that's proposed accepted, and not have try join.
I would say
Well, even that one is
Yeah.
somebody has to write the code. Like you can't just dispatch to the master one.
I mean, you could implement it internally as a helper that just does join,
Sure.
but
But that's little value in that.
Yeah.
It's like
I think ignoring the read-only span one for a moment, if we're going to add anything here, we should probably add join string array, param string array.
what does join internal do?
That way, at least for the allocating path, people have something that works.
I mean, we could do that. The downside is the C# team is already considering params read-only span.
Right.
At which point we would have wanted that instead.
Right.
I mean,
So-
presumably we could add that one too, but then pretty much no one would end up using the string array one.
Right. I would defer that until there's an ask for it and we get the span based params.
Yeah, I would argue that to me, I would separate these because we don't know what the timeline is for the other one.
Mhm.
And the other problem is that in practice, we already have a fuck ton of params in the framework, right? So like I mean, if we talk about legacy APIs, we have a ton of legacy APIs. So one more will not make a difference, but at least until you get the feature, and let's say you're a BB user, I mean, can you use the params that takes a span? I don't know. So we might end up adding the string one anyway.
I see.
So in that case, I would just say, let's just do the params one, and then the other one. So at least that's because in practice, we want people to use join and not combine, right? Because join is the better version of combine.
Well, and if we eventually get something like value array, which has been talked about a few times, then you have the ability to have params of read-only span array, read-only span value array, conceptually.
What is a value array?
It's an array that's non-heap allocated and
Isn't that a span?
no, not quite. It's a value array, which is different from a span
It's not a view.
boy.
because it's basically just a struct, and so you can store it in reference types and things like that.
See, I learned C# because I found C++ is too confusing. I may have to go back to C++ now because maybe it's actually easier at this point.
Well, C++ 20 is finally forcing sign types to be 2's complement, so
Nice. Less undefined behavior. Yeah, I mean, okay, so for this one here, do we have any concerns with this proposed shape? I would just add the params one, and then that's it.
Jeremy, sign up on this.
I
Yeah.
think he commented on this. He basically just said the general idea was that you use try join, I think.
But he said he's fine with 4.
Yeah,
Just yeah.
seems consistent. Alright, then let's do... What's the shape of the params one on combine? We just have literally...
String array. Param string array.
So it's legal to call them without any arguments then?
Looks like it.
yeah, and we say if paths is null, throw argument null exception.
That's funny. In other parts in the framework, we fixed this by basically having a first argument and then make the params one the second. But yeah, that's... I don't care, actually.
But isn't the default for params an empty array, not null?
Nope, it's not.
You have it open.
Nope, it's empty array and it returns an empty string by default if you pass in no arguments.
No.
Yep, params is empty array by default.
Oh, I think I remember now. I think the compiler changed the code gen. I think they basically passed an array.empty, I think.
Possibly.
I think when we did array.empty, I think they changed the code gen for params.
That would be a breaking change for.
I think they said fuck it.
Okay.
Because it was always legal for the receiver to get null, empty,
Pass null.
like you can explicitly still pass null, so
Yeah.
it's just that it seemed more logical than
Okay.
else.
Yeah. Well, so if we do params, then path.join empty will presumably return empty string, just like combine.
Yeah.
If you're adding it, the parameter name is paths.
We probably no, we don't use a string builder. We use
The create.
yeah, string.create
Yep.
stuff.
Okay. Let me type this one in, and then are you expected to survive this? All right. Let me just mark this as approved. All right, so now let's talk about the other favorite topic. Should I present something? Like, what's the issue that you have?
We have a different room to do that.
We do have a different room for that. That's a good point, actually. Yes.
I have, yeah. 50%.
That's unfortunate. It also means I have to stream twice, but hey, some things. Anyway, all right, then let's just shut down this one, and then see you later in a few minutes in the other room.
I'll race you.
There's an API review issue that I opened for it.